Throughout the semester of my Education 4400 class, I was involved in 3 projects that I worked on to help meet all parts of the INTASC Standard 9 Professional Learning and Ethical Practice Standard. This standard was, the teacher engages in ongoing professional learning and uses evidence to continually evaluate his or her own practice, particularly the efforts of his or her choices and the actions of others, and adapts practice to meet the needs of each learner. Before I get into how each of these projects met all parts of these standards, I want to talk about the 3 projects I did decide to do, so that when I discuss them later, you understand exactly what I did. The first project I decided to do was I decided to write math lesson plans in the before, during, and after lesson plan format so that I could get more comfortable in writing these type of lessons in this lesson plan format. The second project I did was I created a curriculum pacing guide for the 2nd grade for the first 9 weeks of the ELA subject. And the third project I decided to do was I worked with 2 other students in the class, and we decided to break down the EdTPA and what it is required. We decided to break it up into tasks, interview, and useful theorists and what their theories were, so that next semester when we do the EdTPA, we have a better understanding of what is required in this project. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the first part of the standard, which is the teacher engages in ongoing professional learning. And I think all 3 of these projects were a main part of this. My professor talked about these projects should be, if you were to have a classroom tomorrow, what are you worried about? What would you want to improve on so that you can be a better teacher and you're ready and you're not worried? So the first project I did was I did math lessons in the before, during, and after lesson plan format. I'm not as comfortable writing those lesson plans, so I decided to write lesson plans for the grade I'm currently in, so that maybe next semester when I am teaching, I have 1 or 2 less lessons I need to write. And I just wanted to improve my confidence in writing these lessons and better understanding of the format, so that when I do write lesson plans next semester and in the future, it doesn't take me forever and I better understand what is required of these lessons. So I decided to do that, and I feel like that helped me learn and improve my understanding of this type of lesson plan format. The second project was the curriculum pacing guide. So, like I said, if I were to have a classroom tomorrow, I would be worried about teaching all the standards throughout the year for all the subjects and figuring out when I need to teach them in order for me to teach all of them and cover them within the year. So I decided to break it up into just the first 9 weeks and to just 1 subject, because if I was able to do that, I was able to do the rest of the year for that subject. And if I was able to do a whole year for 1 subject, in the future, I will be able to do all of the subjects. So I was able to work and find online sources and work with my clinical teacher and figure out what is required and what the current county I'm in uses, so that I can create my own curriculum pacing guide. And I think this helped me improve and understand how it works, how I introduce standards, how standards still need to be reviewed so the students don't forget them, and how I can just keep reinforcing standards so that throughout the year all the standards are covered and the students have a good understanding of everything that they learn throughout the year. And the third project I did was the EdTPA with my fellow classmates. So this helped us because there's not a lot of information out there about what the EdTPA is, and so when we were working together, we got a much more better understanding of what we're going to be required to do and how we're supposed to use all these resources we have in order to create a good EdTPA and present it next semester. So we improved our learning by learning about what this project was and how we can use it, and we broke it all up so that next semester this is a document that we can use to help us with our EdTPA. And the second part of the standard is the teacher uses evidence to continually evaluate their own practice and their own choices. So I think that I did this in my first project, which was my last lessons, by using a lot of outside sources, such as I used Pinterest to help me come up with ideas about what the lesson plan is, what lesson plans might be a good idea, what sources I can use. But I think some of my best sources throughout all my projects were not more so the sources that I found online, but more so the non-tangible ones, such as interviews and communication with people. So I reached out to one of my old professors from last semester, and she taught one of my math education classes, and she was able to help me make improvements on my lesson plan. I had a discussion with her, and she was able to help me feel more confident so that when I revised my first lesson and wrote my second lesson plan, I was more so writing the lesson to fit the activity and what I wanted the students to learn rather than following a template and making sure I filled everything in. And for the second project, the curriculum pacing guide, I found a lot of sources online which were pacing guides for second grade throughout the year and what standards were covered. I talked with my clinical teacher, and she gave me what the county uses for the first grade that I'm in, so that I was able to use what first grade does and try to apply to second grade. And I talked to her, and I found all these things online and kind of organized them and used a meeting that I sat on earlier in the semester where they kind of talked about what the weekly subjects were going to be and how those subjects related to each of the standards. So I used all that information to write my own lesson plan for ELA for second grade for the first 9 weeks. And then for my third project, the kind of sources I used were I used my fellow classmates. We conducted interviews with people who graduated from ECU previously, and we talked to some of our professors that may be helping us next semester with EdTPA. One professor we have, her course talks about a lot of the theorists that we will probably be using in our EdTPA next semester, so we use that to help us talk about the theorists. And she also included a document about the EdTPA that we used to help break down the tasks and the rubrics. And we conducted interviews with her and other people to get a better understanding of what is required and what we're expected to do next semester. Also, at the end of each project, we the students in groups talked about their projects that they did with other groups. And I think that this helped because getting a fresh look of eyes besides my eyes or maybe the professor's eyes and just seeing what my peers had to say about my projects really helped me get a better understanding of what I could do in the future to continue on with my learning or continue on and improve what I did in this project. So for my math lesson, I was able to meet with other people who did math lessons, and I thought maybe instead of just writing 1 or 2 lessons in the future, I can write a whole math lesson unit and write more lessons just to make me feel as comfortable as possible. For the curriculum pacing guide, I was able to see, that this was all that I could do, but the way I kind of organized it and presented it may not be useful or easy to understand to every type of learner. So I need to create a document that everyone can read easily. And in the future, when I have my own classroom, I will have to do my own pacing guide for the whole entire year, for the whole curriculum. So I think that just getting started on this is a good start and will be able to help me in the future. And for my third project, we were able to reflect, and we met with other people who also did projects on the EdTPA, and we were able to create a document that we will be able to use next semester when we are conducting our EdTPA. And for the third part of the standard, which was the teacher adapts practice to meet the needs of each learner, I think this was used a lot in this class, but also throughout all my other classes in my practicum for this semester. I was able, through my practicum this semester, I was able to learn a lot about differentiation and meeting the needs of the students, whether they're higher or they're lower or they're right on grade level. I had a really good teacher who is able to really differentiate. I'm working in a first grade classroom, so she was able to meet the needs of all her learners by doing things such as creating different documents that or independent practices that maybe require more writing for the higher level students and less writing for the lower level students. I was able to see that the students that maybe struggle with reading or writing, She would help by creating templates so they would do less writing, or she would ask what they wanted to say and she would write it in a light color highlighter or a marker so they could trace over it, so they were still practicing their writing, but it took them less time. And I think throughout these lessons, like when I was writing my lessons and my curriculum pacing guide, I'm thinking about the current students that I'm working with in my practicum. And like I said, for the next semester, I'm able to hopefully take these lesson plans that I wrote for my math lesson project and incorporate more differentiation. And I worked with the numbers 1 through 20 for my projects. So maybe for the lower learners, I can do 1 through 10. For the higher learners, instead of having them write 3 ways that they can show me a certain number, I had them write 5 or 6. And for my lower level students, I can have them write just 1 or 2. There's a lot of different ways that I can meet the needs of each student, and I think that was the big part of this whole semester that I learned throughout all of my classes. And I was able, through the learning of my projects, to say, hey, this is how I can help so-and-so in my class. This is how I can help another person in my class. This might be easier for them. This might be harder for them. But throughout this semester and throughout my projects, I've learned a lot, and I've been able to just prepare myself more as a teacher in the future. I learned a lot about myself and what I am more confident in now thanks to these projects. I'm able to, in next semester when I will be conducting my EdCPA, I can reference this resource that my fellow classmates and I came up with. In the future, when I start a new job, if the local school or county does not have a curriculum pacing guide, I'll be able to pull up my pacing guide and say, this is what I did, this is what I can do for this class or this grade that I'm in. And, whenever I write math lesson plans, the information I gained from my professor will be able to help me when I'm writing them in the future. For no matter what grade level I use, I'll be able to say, oh, it's not just a template. I need to do this. I need to do this. I just need to make sure that the students' needs are met, and it's not more of a, are they doing this? Did I fill this part out? Did I fill that part out? It's more so, is the needs of my students being met, and will my students be able to learn what I want them to learn by the end of this lesson? So overall, throughout this semester, I've done 3 different projects that really helped improve myself as a teacher and my own learning. I was able to use a lot of outside sources, and through the internet or through conducting conversations and interviews with fellow people or teachers or professors. And now I feel a lot more confident and ready to be a teacher of my own classroom. And I have a handful of things now that I'm not as worried about. And that's all.